In this section of the tutorial, we're going to look at organising and sequencing our content. And it's really important to do this in the best ways, and that's what we're going to look at now. But always bear in mind that the core principles of learning are also fundamental to the way we organise our content, and as you'll see later, the methods we select to support that content. Some of these key principles are, firstly, avoid cognitive overload. We know what that means, and the implications are quite straightforward. Keep things nicely chunked. Don't put in stuff that's not necessary. Ensure connections between prior knowledge and new knowledge. We know what's important about that, and that provides a good advanced organiser. And finally, a core principle is to teach key concepts and principles that underpin the structure or the understanding of a topic. And we do that in a logical sequence. So let's move on. Now, here's the all-purpose, all-part, all-learning model. And the basic idea of this, it's brain compatible, that when we look at something and we try to learn it, we try to get some overall picture of it. And invariably, we can't put it all together because there's lots of stuff. So the idea is we then start to look at the parts, and those parts should be in the best logical order for learning. So the first O creates that framework. Then as we do the parts, it connects knowledge together in manageable chunks. And hopefully, if we do it well, at the end, the O starts to take a nice shape in our minds and we understand what the topic's about. Now, here are some specific organisation structures. Important point to bear in mind that you would choose a structure that fits the kind of content that you teach. And it's also possible to use a number of these in any given session, and it's all about what supports the learning best. So let's have a look at some of these. Okay. Sometimes we might be teaching a subject where there's a logical time series. For example, we're teaching history and we need to start from 1875 and we move on and we move on. Where there's a logical order in terms of beginning to end, it's a good approach. Similarly, if we've got a topic that has a logical structure, start with the topic or concept or principle that is most fundamental. Do it in the most logical order that supports understanding. Similarly, if we're showing parts of an object, show those parts that are central to getting the fundamental understanding, and again, supporting the development of memory over time. The next two, questions and answers and problems, possible solutions, are quite similar in the sense that they can be the same thing. But the essential idea is that we present the question, the problem, and then the content comes into play to provide answers, solutions. One that's similar again is to actually compare different opinion, options, approaches to a situational problem. Now the next two you should be quite familiar with. Move from the simple to complex. It's a fairly obvious one. If you're dealing with some kind of component, look at the more simple ones first and then move to more complex, and the same from concrete to abstract. It's much easier to relate to something that's concrete in your real world before you try to look at it in a more abstract way. The last couple, again, we're probably familiar with. Inductive and deductive reasoning. Well, one is start from a specific example. So here's a dog, it's an example of a mammal, or this is what a mammal is, and a dog is an example of that. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, that use the structure or structures that will facilitate the learning that you're dealing with. And you may use more than one in a given lesson. Hope that has helped in some way to build understanding of the importance of structuring the content in the best ways possible.